The time has come, my friends, for us to watch the trailer, the pre-ordered trailer for Death Stranding 2. If you guys are OGs, we're talking 2018 era, okay? You'll know what I think of Death Stranding, but Spark Notes, I like Death Stranding as a rainy day game. It's something I boot up and I play when I'm just feeling like vegging out. You know, I do live in Colorado. I have kids though, so it's a rare occurrence when you pop an edible or something if they're staying over at grandma's house or something, you know, for the day. And I'm like, you know what? Let's just veg out. That's when you can just check out and deliver some packages. You know, in terms of the story, I find it laughably bad. Like the dialogue is ridiculous. Like Kojima has characters in this named Die Hard Man. Like I don't play Death Stranding for the writing. I play it for how insane it is. The fact that it's basically an acid trip that you're able to buy in a store over the counter. And I also find it kind of relaxing. And I like the music choice. And of course, graphically, they're really impressive. But I do not agree with people who are like, the game's super boring and bland and it has no gameplay. It does. I understand it's not for everybody, but I do like the gameplay. I do like navigating difficult terrain and stuff with different tools. So I like Death Stranding. I just think he needs an editor to trim down some of the dialogue. But that being said, Death Stranding 2, it's been on the radar. He just was at South by Southwest, and I believe it was South by Southwest, right? I believe that's the conference it was. But anyway, he was at a conference. He dropped this trailer as part of it, and this is announcing the release date, pre-orders, all of that stuff. And so we're going to check it out. You ready? Let's do it. PlayStation.
You, sir, are an unrepentant criminal. Guilty of illegally entering our country on multiple occasions.
The only thing that I'm guilty of is doing your dirty work.
And by way of compensation, we have overlooked your crimes.
Bring it on, because I'm not doing this shit anymore.
What makes you think you have a choice?
What kind of cargo?
Cargo like brain dead, pregnant women.
No one would possibly allow that.
That's why I have to smuggle them in. They make me bring them over from Mexico.
This thing between us. It was a mistake.
No. No, it was not a mistake. It was not a mistake.
Can we just acknowledge that will never not be insane? Okay, we're used to it now because we've seen the first game. It's still crazy, okay? A baby hanging out in a stomach with black eyeline. It's crazy, okay? But that's why we like Kojima, because he's like an alien, you know? He's just outside of his mind. I will say, graphically, the facial animations and face, like motion capture on the faces is wildly impressive. Way better than, I think, the first game, which was no slacker to begin with. And also way better than I think even like Forbidden West, which of course was also Decima Engine. So they've definitely done some work. Also, I find this outfit that BB is wearing absolutely adorable. This is awesome. But not in a capsule now. Real quick, I thought of it. How does this work if you face plant? You know, when you're going down a steep hill in the first game, if you're not holding on to your backpack, you sometimes face plant. Now you have a baby not enclosed. Like maybe it has like a cute little airbag. Maybe that's what they're gonna show. Oh. 11 months after the birth of the UCA.
dun 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 dun. Dun 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 dun. Dun 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 no 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 no
I couldn't protect Lou.
It's from that other trailer.
I tried to jump us out of there. But I could only take my equipment with me,
The little wings.
and I couldn't possibly think of Lou like that. There was no way for the two of us to escape together. The best I could hope for was to jump Lou out. Just Lou.
I've been alone this whole time.
You're wrong. Death can tear us apart. We'll always be connected. We will always be with you, no matter what. You will never, ever be alone.
This time, I'll make a lasting connection with the lady in red. The perfect ending humanity deserved.
For the sake of the future, we must all come together. As a barrier to the bad, and a gateway to the good. All hands,
Little hands.
brace for launch.
That was adorable. What's happening? Well, there's your problem.
A world divided.
Put Snake in the game. Let's do it.
With a few sticks for encouragement.
The UCA's precursor, the United States of America, had a prominent gun culture. A distinctly American philosophy, and one which would appear to have spread to this continent. The more we seek to unite the people with metaphorical ropes, the more essential sticks seem to become.
DHB Magellan. Integrate! Everyone, hold on tight.
Dude, what even just happened? Okay, first thing, I just have to put it out there because otherwise I'm going to forget. This part, you know, where he puts the thing on his head and he does the grunt. So he's inside like the VR headset or whatever, and he puts it on top of the whatever, simulacra or whatever it is. It reminded me of... That's all I could think of when he did this. So anyway, sorry to point that out. Now you're always going to think of that whenever you see this. Beyond that, there's kind of two phases to this trailer, which I appreciate. For one, it's like they go through some obvious like gameplay pointed stuff, and then they have like the epilogue to the trailer with that. It's I of course love the vibe because the whole thing is just one massive acid trip. But little snippets like this showing environmental stuff. So like forest fires, the flooding, which is something they showed in the last trailer. They show like the avalanche here in a second, dust storms and things. This is, you know, I don't know if it's just this gen with like the power upgrades, but Monster Hunter did this, AC Shadows is doing this, and now Death Stranding is doing it, where they're like, fidelity is already really high. We could go bigger with the map, but I don't know if players even really want that. You know, more travel time between locations. I think they want more dynamics. So they're going with this where they add in like weather systems, where they add in more dynamic things to shake it up, which I'm all for. I mean, I like dynamics. And in the context of a game like Death Stranding, I think it makes a lot of sense because if you wanted to do something like, for example, you build a road, but then the dust storm comes in and requires repairs. So that way you don't just set it and forget it, which is something that happens with the other games as well. I resized one of my watches and they have these little like collar pieces for the pins when you slide it into the watch. And so you have to keep the collars, but one of them fell and I couldn't find it. I just found it with my foot. Anyway, sorry. Continuing on, I think that this makes sense. I like the idea of the dynamic weather stuff. In terms of the story, I'm not even gonna begin to try and guess what it is. Obviously, they have some stuff like these massive fights. They do show a lot of clips of like gunplay and these like racing sequences. It's like bigger boss fights. They show this stuff. So they've obviously overhauled how the vehicles work. It just seems to take everything the first game did and try to ramp it up, which I think is how you do a sequel to a game like Death Stranding, because it is what it is. I don't think you're gonna necessarily reinvent the wheel. I think you just have to like double down on everything and just make every piece that sure was polarizing, but that some people loved at the same time, and just expand it and build it out. Now, I do want to ask you guys, this is also interesting, that right there. So of course they have the tram. So I'm wondering if like, do you get to build the train and deliver cargo like that? Is this the replacement for the highways in the first game? Is that what they're doing? I'm not sure. But that could be a cool way of automating some of the deliveries, as they allude to at the beginning of the trailer. But one of the other things, like they show you riding on it as well. But they also show this where you have like a vehicle customized much more with like what appear to be rockets. That's weird and interesting, but that could be really kind of cool to see. But here's my question, and this was something that was brought up by Joel Raptor on our podcast, and I just hadn't really thought of it before, but I do think it's an interesting question. Do you think that Death Stranding 2 outperforms the first game? In other words, do you think that this game, based on what you're seeing, wins over people who didn't like the first game, or wins over a new audience who maybe decided not to try the first game for one reason or another? They just like weren't super compelled. Because Jor was saying he expects this to perform a good bit worse than the first game, which I thought was interesting because obviously it's a sequel. And I think there's kind of two ways of looking at it. If you're just viewing it purely on a numbers basis, you're like, hey, the first game had hype levels up here. The second game, everybody's heard of it by now. A lot of the players who played this did love it. I mean, even if we say it's like all the way up here, all these people liked it. But there were some people who played Death Stranding at launch and just didn't love it. And those people probably fall off. So does that mean that this game, you know, starts here and then maybe elevates and gets up to like this level, still beneath the initial highs of the first game, but not bad? I'm honestly not sure. I do think, because they said that this is PS5 exclusive too, right? So it's dealing with fewer consoles to install. It will come to PC, I'm guessing much faster than the first game did. So I think that will certainly help. Not day and date, I don't think, but you know, even if it's 6 months of exclusivity, I think PC copies help it. But I am interested to see whether this like attracts a new audience, because after we talked about that on the podcast with Jor, I talked to a buddy of mine who was living in the same college house as me when the first game came out, because we lived in a house all together because I was finishing college, and you know, we were wrapping up our degrees and everything right when Death Stranding was coming out, leading into 2019. So I was talking to a buddy of mine who played Death Stranding at launch, and he's the completionist guy I tell you guys about all the time. He's the one that like grinded out something like I think it was something stupid. It was like 70 levels or something in Elden Ring before even like fighting Tree Sentinel. He like skipped Tree Sentinel, went and grinded the boulder that runs down in like Caelid, and gained a crap ton of levels. And then he was like, yeah, now all the bosses I can like 3-shot them. It's like, yeah, you're not really supposed to grind levels for 12 hours straight or whatever it was he did. But he's just one of those players who like will no life and like 100% complete something, even if he's doing it in an indirect way. But I asked him what he thought about Death Stranding because he's such a funny guy. He's also the same one who told me, and then I'll get to what he was saying. He's the same guy that told me, I think it was back in the day with, I don't remember what game it was, but we were playing an RPG and he's designing his character and he had this female character. And I just asked him off the cuff, oh, why do you play as the female character instead of selecting like a male for you to role play with? And he just turned to me and very plainly said, if I'm going to stare at someone's ass for 80 hours of gameplay, I'd rather it be a girl's ass. I was like, touche, you got me there. Okay. Can't argue with that. I mean, you got me. So he's a very funny guy, but I asked him like what he thought of Death Stranding 2 and everything. And he was somebody kind of reflecting the opinion that Jor was stating, where he was like, yeah, I played the first game. It just like got really dry and boring by the end. He's like, I don't know if I want to jump into another 100 hours of that. And I was like, honestly, fair. I mean, maybe some people are like more people than I think are out there are also thinking that way. Because I look at this and I'm like, even though I didn't like parts of the first game, I look at this and I'm like, it seems like they're doubling down on a lot of the stuff that I did like. They're expanding gameplay systems. They're at least in the clips we're seeing, the cutscenes are much sharper. They're much faster paced. It at least seems right now, this could change, but it seems right now that there's a lot less rambling for 20, 30 minutes at a time, which I think is great. So I like a lot of what I'm seeing, and this gets me excited to jump in and try it because I'm like, ooh, they're like building on what they did before. And so maybe they trimmed out like some of the stuff I didn't like and they're adding a lot of stuff I did like, or doubling down and expanding it. But I could also, I don't know if I could blame somebody if they're like, yeah, I thought the first game was confusing and boring after a while, so I'm good, you know? But OMG, it's Elijah says, I think it'd be hard for Death Stranding 2 to beat the 5 million the first sold. Well, and that's also one interesting thing is that apparently like there was a good amount of like a lot of marketing dollars riding on the first game, exclusivity deals and everything, of course, with PlayStation. And they shared technology with Kojima with the Decima engine, which was their own proprietary engine that was built by Guerrilla. So, you know, they put a lot of money into the first game and allegedly it didn't do as well as they were hoping. I mean, I believe Days Gone at this point has outsold it by a pretty decent margin, to be fair. Days Gone has been on, I think, deeper sales typically than Death Stranding has been, but it is just insane. But we also don't know what the budget was like on the actual internal development side of things. But anyway, I find it crazy and wacky and wild. I would guess it's received similarly to the first game because I think the same types of people will play it. So like, what was the first? I don't remember, but the first game's Metacritic, I'm going to guess before I hit enter was like, I don't remember what it was. I'm going to guess 87. Let's see. Oh, lower than I thought. It's 82. I thought it was higher than that. But I think that this reflects something that I think something that's going to apply to this game too, which is some people or a lot of people are going to love it and call it game of the year, masterpiece, all of that. But a lot of other people are going to be like, I have no idea what was happening. It's really confusing. It doesn't make any sense. It seems to intentionally want to give me a headache. And that's, you know, I think that all of those perspectives are right. It depends on what you like. Like I like the relaxing gameplay. I like just kind of hiking through delivering packages, but I don't blame people if they don't like that. If they're like, no, I want more action. I think they're adding a lot more action. They seem to show a lot more gameplay with like the gigantic, whatever tar like monsters and sort of the Pacific Rim looking fights they're going to do. They show a lot more like gunplay. So I think they're going to have a lot more action to probably smooth that over and appeal to some of those people, but time will tell, you know. The tough thing though is even if they add that stuff, can they convince people that what they've added is engaging and satisfying to that extent, you know? Because if people don't believe it or are like, yeah, I see that they've added more gunplay and they've added some bigger boss fights and stuff, that's great. But I just don't think I can do another 80 hours or 60 hours or whatever. You know, at that point, it's tough to get there. Jack, thank you for the 5. Kojima after his third tab of acid. F it. Add Solid Snake. Yeah, I mean, it's one thing where it's, at this point, he's kind of like daring people. He's like, yeah, what are you going to do about it? Yeah, I added basically Solid Snake to the game. What are you going to do about it? Suck it up, loser. You know? But he's Kojima. He can do it. In no shock at all. Hold on, where is it? Geoff Keighley. Of course, he posted a picture right as the trailer dropped, celebrating the new Death Stranding 2 trailer and release date announcement tonight in Austin with my friend Hideo Kojima. They're so funny together. I'm still not convinced that Kojima knows who Jeff is. They always have kind of funny interactions. Yeah, I think it's the language barrier, frankly, but it is always funny how Jeff's like, come here, hug, I love you. And Kojima's just kind of there, you know. But anyway, they're very funny. They're very funny together. That being said, I think a lot of this looks solid. I like a lot of what I'm seeing. I do think it's going to be very similar to the first game in structure and style. I think it's probably going to have more option for violent solutions with gunplay and stuff like that. But I do think fundamentally it's going to still be a game about delivering stuff. And it's still going to have the strand system and all of those things. And almost certainly it will have Kojima writing throughout, which is that he just loves to write. And he will write 15-page monologues for the actors to do. And then, you know, it could have been a memo. He could have gotten it out in a paragraph, but instead it's 15 pages. And that's just something you have to kind of put up with. I tend to like the gameplay enough that I'm not really bothered by it, and I'm okay with that. I can work with it. But I also don't blame people if they're like, I'm good. The writing's pretentious. I think the writing is self-indulgent. You know, that old Family Guy clip where Peter's like, I don't like The Godfather because it insists upon itself. I kind of feel that with Kojima writing, unironically, because I do feel like a lot of it is just like, okay, like, we get it. This is profound and this is artsy and weird. But one of my old teachers in college, he taught a playwriting class, and he said something that stuck with me for a long time. He said, novice writers write a lot. Expert writers write enough. And I think that's a very important thing to remember with this type of game, is that you can communicate pages of dialogue and thought processes with just a look or a smirk. Think of how many video essays were made on the end of The Last of Us when Ellie looks at Joel after he says, I swear, and she just says, okay. And then the credits roll. He says, I swear, and okay. 3 words, and you could write whole essays on what the implications of that are, what she's probably actually thinking when she says okay, what it means that she said okay instead of continuing to confront him, the fact that she's accepting his answer even though she doesn't believe it, and all of these things. Because you can communicate, I think, much more effectively emotional things by tying in these other aspects of communication, which is body language, which is intonation, which is not just what is said, but also what's left unsaid. And I think when you write just paragraphs upon paragraphs upon paragraphs, you are communicating a lot, but I think it's not effective. And I think a lot of people start to mentally check out. You know, I remember being frustrated with the end of Death Stranding because they have that bit on the beach. No spoilers, it's too specific, but basically you're on a beach and it's a very purgatory-esque thing where a character is just kind of talking and monologuing and doing lots of exposition in the process. But what inevitably happens is that you kind of mentally check out and you don't even know what was said because you just kind of like zone out because it's just boring. And because it's literally just somebody talking at you. And somebody in the comments of that critique was telling me, no, it's actually really impressive because they are trying to make you feel like you're in purgatory too. So it's meant to be this meta thing where you feel like you're captured in this purgatory state, just like Sam is. And that's why it's actually good. And I'm sorry, if I'm playing a video game and I start to feel like I'm in actual purgatory, I think I'm still allowed to dislike that, you know? Like, I understand you meant to do that. It doesn't mean that I have to like it, you know? It just doesn't. Like, if I go out to a restaurant and I order a burrito and I eat it and it gives me horrifying stomach problems, where I go to the hospital, they put me on an IV because everything's flushing out of my body. And then I go back and I confront the chef and he's like, no, that burrito is meant to do that. It's meant to turn you inside out. We meant to do that. I feel like I'm still allowed to be upset and to not, even though you meant to do that, it doesn't mean I have to like it. Okay. A rough analogy, I grant you, but hopefully it serves the point. I'm somebody that thinks Death Stranding is kind of a complex tapestry. I like big parts of it and I enjoy big parts of it, and I still go back to it fairly regularly just to kind of relax and chill. But I think there's huge areas where it's like, this could really improve. And I hope with the sequel it does. The problem is that there is literally nobody to check Kojima at this point. I think he's at his best when he has like some creative equals or editors and stuff who can kind of reel him back in, occasions where he's just like going crazy and writing pages and pages. And it's like, okay, let's cut that, tighten it up, do it this way. Boom. Brilliant. I think that's when he's at his best. But since he's made his own company, he's been able to just do literally whatever he wants. And I think sometimes he gets in his own way. It's my stance. But I don't know. I think Death Stranding 2 looks crazy, and I'm excited to try it. It comes out late June, I believe June 26th. So it's coming actually quite soon. And I think this is not the only game we're going to hear releasing earlier than we expected it to. I think this year we're going to be getting a good number of games that are kind of pumping out in that August, September area, because a lot of companies just don't want to be anywhere close to GTA 6, which is probably coming late October would be my guess. I think there's a strong chance that GTA 6 comes October 28th. So we'll see. What would then distinguish Kojima game from others? His insane ideas. I think Kojima is an idea man. I don't think he's a dialogue man. And that's my primary frustration, is just, I think if you let Kojima do everything, but you have somebody else write the dialogue, and he communicates the ideas that should be spoken in the dialogue, but somebody else writes the dialogue, I think it works way better. Kojima wrote Lost. Kojima... That's actually... Yeah, I think he'd be... It's like Kojima wrote the last 3 seasons of Lost, where it's just like, what? What? Yeah, he's the George Lucas of games. I think that's actually a good point, Gilmar Eric Smith. I think you're actually onto something there, because he's really good at the big picture stuff. But the second you ask, George Lucas to write dialogue, he's totally a lost cause, because he doesn't know how humans speak, And I think that's Kojima, is great idea, man. When it gets into the nitty gritty, it gets real confusing. 'Cause it's like, bro, nobody talks like this. He took my thing.